Hi friends, this is a redo of chapter 3. I just got a few emails saying that it cut off at 8 minutes. I'm not sure why that happened, but I'm going to redo chapter 3. And then I want you to be on the lookout for tomorrow. I'm going to try to set up some conference thing. We can all get together on a video and chit chat with each other. I'm going to see if I can set that up. I'm not sure how it's going to go. It's probably going to be chaotic, but we're going to do it. All right, friends, so chapter 3, hamsters on a roll. I learned a lot about human behavior during my first 7 months in room 26. Humans can be funny, sad, happy, and mad, all in one day. But the one person I can't quite understand is Mrs. Brisbane. Just when I think I figured her out, she does something she's never ever done before. For instance, every single morning she comes into the classroom, puts her book on her desk and her purse into her desk drawer, checks her hair in the mirror, and then walks towards the window and says, "Good morning, fellows. Here's hoping for another great day." I always tell her that I'm sure it will be unsqueakably great. And Og sometimes answers with his goofy boing. But on that Tuesday, for the first time all year, she came into the room, dumped her books on her desk, put her purse in the drawer, and slammed it shut. And then she walked over to the bulletin board and stared at the cutouts of the planets that were up there. "I wonder how many bulletin boards I've put up and taken down over the years," she asked. I hope she wasn't asking me because I didn't have the exact answer. I did know that Mrs. Brisbane had been teaching for many years, so the answer would be lots, lots, and lots. She shook her head and began taking down the cutout pictures of the planets with interesting names like Neptune, Jupiter, and Saturn. Then there was Mars, which was an angry-looking red color with spots on it that looked like big, scary eyes, especially at night. I wasn't sorry to see that picture go. The bulletin board was empty by the time the students started streaming in. For months, they'd come in bundled up in coats and boots, hats and gloves, and now they had on light jackets and sweaters, and it didn't take long for them to hang their things in the cloakroom and hurry to their seats. I heard that Kurt came bounding into the room with a big smile on his face. "Mrs. Brisbane, I'm sorry about yesterday. To make up for it, I have a surprise for Humphrey." "Can I give it to him now?" he asked. "A surprise for me?" That got my whiskers wiggling, and it started Gail giggling. "What is it?" she said. "Let me see." Soon the other students were gathered around Kirk, begging him to let them see the surprise. "Okay, Kirk, what is it?" asked Mrs. Brisbane. Her arms were folded, and she had a suspicious look on her face. After all, Kirk had done a few things that would make any teacher unhappy. Once, he put a cushion under "Repeat It, Please" Richie's chair that made a very, very rude noise when Richie sat on it. He called it a whoopee cushion. My friends laughed so hard, including Richie, that they all wanted a chance to sit on it. But Mrs. Brisbane took it away and made Kirk sit in the cloakroom for a while. This time, Mrs. Brisbane held out her hand. "Let me see it, Kirk," she said. Boy, she sure didn't trust him. Kirk reached into his backpack and pulled out something I couldn't see. All of my friends went ooh and ah, which made my heart thump faster and faster. "Can you see it, Og?" I squeaked to my table mate. There was no answer. "It's a hamster ball. We can put Humphrey inside and he can roll around the classroom. See, there are air holes in it. It's good exercise," Kirk explained. "We can try it." "Let's go try it." The thought of rolling around the classroom during the day was so exciting. I climbed up on my ladder to get a closer look. Mrs. Brisbane held the clear yellow ball in her hand. "Well," she said, "I suppose it would be nice for Humphrey, but we have to be careful that we don't step on him or he doesn't roll someplace dangerous." My friends all cheered and I joined in. Og started splashing, so I knew he approved. "And we can't let this interfere with our schoolwork. Testing is coming up, you know," Mrs. Brisbane said with a frown. Kirk had already opened my cage. "Don't hurt him," said Golden Miranda, who was always looking out for me. Kirk placed me in the ball and then snapped the top shut. "Make sure it closed tightly, please." "Speak up," Saya said softly. She was shy, but she always looked out for me too. It was kind of weird being enclosed in a round object. Since it was yellow plastic, the world looked yellow to me, and Miranda was even more golden than ever. I checked to see that there were holes in the plastic. Yes, yes, yes. I wouldn't have trouble breathing. "Careful now," warned Mrs. Brisbane as Kirk set the ball on the floor in front of the classroom. My fellow students crouched down to watch. "Go on, Humphrey Dumpty," said AJ. "Make the ball go." Let me tell you, it's very strange being inside a ball. For one thing, there's nothing flat to stand on, like a floor. So even standing still, the ball felt wobbly. Run, Humphrey, said Seth. Get it moving. I hesitated for a little bit, but when I heard Og go boing, I knew I had to move. I went slowly at first, just taking tiny steps. My friends moved back to give me room to roll down the center aisle. Go, Humphrey, go, said Kirk. I jogged a little faster. Go, Humphrey, go, the other students chanted. Go, go, go. I liked the encouragement, and I liked the feeling of going fast. So I began to run. It was like spinning my wheel, only this time I was actually going somewhere. Many times before, I'd scurried across the floor of the classroom, but never when the other students were there. As I zoomed down the aisle between the tables and the chairs, my friends followed me. The bell rang, which meant school had begun. But once I got rolling, I didn't know how to stop. As much fun as the hamster ball was, it was scary, scary, scary too, because I couldn't control where I was going. I heard Mrs. Brisbane say, "Class, we need to begin our work." But I was on a roll, heading right for the wall. Someone gasped. I think it was Miranda. "He'll crash," she said. "Stop him." I tried to slow down, but it was too late. The ball bounced off the wall, shot backwards towards the aisle. I was now upside down, and before I could get back on my feet, I came to a stop that was so sudden I did a double flip inside the ball. I looked up and saw a large foot in a sensible black shoe. It was Mrs. Brisbane's foot. "Class, I want you all in your seats. Take out your sheet of paper for the dictionary drill. I'll take attendance while you get started." I was catching my breath when she leaned down over me and she said, "And you, young man, will settle down." When Mrs. Brisbane talked like that, nobody argues with her, especially not a small golden hamster enclosed in a ball. Once she removed her foot, I cautiously headed back down the center aisle between the desks. Mrs. Brisbane kept a close eye on me while my friends took the test. Usually, I took the test along with them, writing the answers in my notebook. But I was enjoying my freedom a little bit too much for that. I kept on jogging up and down the center aisle, but now I was careful to slow to a stop before hitting the wall. That way, I just tapped it, rolled backwards, then turned my body inside the ball and jogged toward the opposite wall again. My friends wrote quietly while Mrs. Brisbane gave out the words. I tried not to make too much noise as I sailed past Mandy's shiny red shoes, Art's black high tops, and Garth's scuffed white sneakers. Sit still, Seth's feet tap, tap, tapped as he wrote. I don't know how many times it went back and forth, but it was getting a little boring. If only I could turn this thing. After the test papers were collected, Mrs. Brisbane said it was time to finish the spring into numbers project. I think my friends forgot about me while they cut and pasted, colored, and stapled their papers. By recess time, room 26 looked completely different. The bulletin board was covered with cutouts of flowers, rabbits, and robins, but they had math problems on them. Plus, minus numbers, multiplying, dividing. Problems peeked out from the leaves of the blossoms that ran up and down the rabbit's ears and robin's wings. Tabitha and Richie made clouds in all kinds of shapes, even triangles and squares. Gail and Saya tacked a row of colorful flowers all around the chalkboard. There was a pattern to the colors, and it took me a while to figure it out. Garth and AJ made a huge kite with a long, long, long tail that had a long, long problem on it. I began to jog with joy. Spring was bright, spring was happy, spring was fun. While Mrs. Brisbane helped hang the kite, I suddenly hit the leg of Saya's desk and veered off toward the door, which was open to let in the spring breeze. I sailed out of room 26, and not one of my friends noticed. "Help, help, help," I squeaked. In the distance, I heard Og's boing, but everything was completely silent in the hall. As I rolled out of room 26 toward the side door, I wondered if I'd end up on the playground again. Frantically, I tried to guide the ball away from the door, but it wouldn't turn quickly enough. Luckily, the door was closed tight, so I bounced off of it. Now I was heading toward another door. It was far, far, far away, past a long row of classrooms. Suddenly, I wished Aldo hadn't polished the floor quite so well. I also wished the hamster ball had brakes. The best I could do was slow it down, stop moving my legs. What an unsqueakably dangerous situation for a small hamster. At least my cage had that lock that doesn't lock, but there's no good way for me to get out of that ball. "Goodbye, room 26, I squeaked. Suddenly, I heard a piercingly loud noise. Hamsters are very sensitive creatures, and we don't appreciate loud noises. "Stop right there," a voice firmly ordered. The ball stopped abruptly, and this time it did a triple flip. but I recognized the voice and the shrill sound. It was Mrs. Wright and her whistle. She was standing directly in front of me with one of her huge white puffy shoes resting on the top of the ball. Just for fun, I guess, she blew her whistle again. "Mrs. Brisbane," she bellowed. Mrs. Brisbane rushed out into the hallway and hurried towards us. "What's wrong, Mrs. Wright?" That sounded funny, but I wasn't in the mood to laugh. I was afraid Mrs. Wright might blow that whistle again. "I just happened to be coming down the hall when I found your rat out here." "For goodness sakes," Mrs. Brisbane leaned down and picked up the ball. "How did you get out here?" "You created a very dangerous situation," said Mrs. Wright. "Someone could trip over him and get hurt." "Well, no one did," said Mrs. Brisbane, "and don't worry, it won't happen again." Mrs. Wright sniffed loudly. "Still, I must report this to Mr. Morales." "Do whatever you think you should do," Mrs. Brisbane sounded a little snippy, and I was glad. "Come on, Humphrey." My classmates gathered at the door waiting for my return. "Back in your seats," Mrs. Brisbane told them, "and you, Humphrey, are going back to your cage." I was so happy to be home. I took a long drink of water and then headed straight for my sleeping hut and a nice long doze. All right, friends, that's the end of chapter 3. We're going to do chapter 4 and maybe 5 tomorrow. We'll see. I miss you guys so much. I'll talk to you tomorrow.